Welcome to the Women's History Month Kickoff. My name is Amani Green. I am a graduating senior political science major with a minor in psychology. I am honored to serve as the 2018 Miss Prairie View A&M University. Today's ceremony, I just want to say a small quote that I'd like to live by. Don't worry about being successful, but work toward being significant, and the success will naturally follow. Oprah Winfrey. Now I would like to welcome to the stage our first speaker, Ms. Chelsea B.H. Young, Assistant Director of the Honors Program.
Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the kickoff of Women's History Month. So the month of March has been designated as the Women's History Month. We celebrate women all year long, but we chose March, well, the history says so, just to start the year off with highlighting the countless contributions women have made in history, in society, and as they continue to do in their community. The theme this year, Visionary Women, Champions of Peace and Nonviolence, honors women who have led efforts to end war, violence, and injustice and have pioneered the use of nonviolence to change society. I believe the beauty of being a woman is that we are all made unique with a background tied to a very compelling story. Growing up in a house of majority women myself, I've been fortunate enough to witness different personalities who have all had the same agenda and action in mind. I've come to believe that some of our champions are armored with gold and rumble into the fight without hesitation or fear. And some of our champions of peace are women who are quiet healers that gracefully speak strong words that create enormous waves of action. Whichever approach you choose, ladies, we women, the root of the culture, are leaders whether you sign up for it or not. We must stay persistent in leading our communities, families, and friends above hatred and violence. There's so much that we see and hear every day that can cause so much intimidation and fear. But as my aunt would tell me, class of '82, she says, Chelsea, it's okay to be afraid, but I need you to be brave, and I need you to find courage above everything else. Let's make more conversation about peace and loving our neighbor. Let our actions reflect our character and compassion, and let's stand together and stronger for justice. And at Prairie View A&M University. Thank you. Precious Lord, take my hand and lead me on. Let me stand. I am weak. I am tired. I am worn through the storms, through the night. Lead me on to that light. Thank you.
Can we give her one more round of applause, please? Next, we'll have an introduction speaker, Dr. E. Joanne Thomas Smith, Provost Emerita give her a round of applause for
Welcome to the place I always refer to as the brightest sun in the southwestern sky, Prairie View A&M University. On this afternoon, we are celebrating women. Our theme is Visionary Women, Champions of Peace and Nonviolence. A luminous point in the sky, the noun version. A principal screen on the stage, the verb meaning. What a time. What a time is this? First of all, I want to mention that we are blessed to have in our midst an academic, a female academic, Captain Marvel. First woman president, not just a woman, but a phenomenal woman, worthy of emulation by women throughout the globe. A woman focused on building the academic and the financial profile that will catapult us to the real place of being an institution of the first class. Let's give it up for our president. What a time is this? More women than ever elected to office in America. More girls than ever attaining access to education in India. Women successfully bringing to the forefront past abuses and misuses that shall never, ever be tolerated again. Women celebrating the right to voice, the right to vision. We have a speaker today, special. With her twin, Melinda, precocious preschoolers, amazing high school graduates, recipient with her twin of scholarships awarded on site by yours truly in an effort to keep her from going to one of those schools that was just insisting that she come. I didn't have approval. I had to ask for forgiveness because I awarded a scholarship I didn't even have authority to award. Graduating magna cum laude from Prairie View A&M University. Graduating with distinction with a master's and the doctorate degree from the Ohio State University. Doing the hard but the necessary work required to become a scholar extraordinaire. Publishing the book, Dreaming Blackness, Black Nationalism and African American Public Opinion. And most recently, The Race Whisperer, Barack Obama and the Political Uses of Race. Working now on a project entitled Mountaintop Removal, Martin Luther King, Trump, and the Racial Mountain. Being a global citizen, speaking all over Europe, especially Germany, providing commentary on public radio, serving on faculties at Wellesley and at Rutgers University. And just a few weeks ago, hope you saw it, on the 13th of February, there was an op-ed titled, Governor Northam's Troubling Silence on Racism in the New York Times, it was. Northam, you know, is the governor of Virginia, shown in the blackface in that yearbook. Author of the article is described as, in the New York Times describes this writer as a political scientist who specializes in contemporary black politics, public opinion, and political rhetoric. Luminous point in the sky. Principal screaming on screen or stage. I present to you the noun and the verb, the star, our star, a proud, productive Panther, is here as our endowed professor of political science and principal investigator for the Mellon Foundation's American Studies Initiative. Yes, by any and all measures, a star. Once, twice, 3 times a star, Dr. Melanye Price. Let's give it up for our star. Melanie.
I know that all months at Prairie View will not be like this first month. I tell myself that all the time. All months will not be like this first month. But on those days when they are not like this first month, I will just think back to how good this month has been. And I think it will carry me on until I can get back to this place again. I want to start by thanking the Committee for Women's History Month, led by Dr. Josette Bradford, who worked hard to plan this event and all the events that will take place this month. I am so honored that they would think that I have something to offer. I mean, I like to tell myself that I'm entertaining, but I talk to myself all the time. And so outside of students who are required to listen to me talk, when anybody else shows up, I am still honored that they are willing to. I especially want to thank Chelsea Young, whose job it was to wrangle out of me a topic, a time, a title, and all of those things while I was moving across country and changing jobs. And I am grateful for her persistence and her patience across 3 email addresses, 2 phone numbers. But she's been doing it. When I talk about PV, the story I tell the most involves my lifelong mentor, Dr. Julius W, who was the first Black woman to get a PhD in political science and director of what used to be the Benjamin Banneker Honors College. And it also involves Dr. Joanna Thomas Smith. These 2 women stepped into the middle of my life and my family's life and changed its trajectory. Though Dr. Prestidge is no longer with us, I am so grateful that Joanna Thomas Smith is still here and that she thinks that I am something that makes her proud. I have been met with such kindness and warmth since I returned here that has been facilitated by many people, but during Women's History Month, or as I'm gonna call it from now on, Black Women's History Month, I want to recognize the generosity of Black women on this campus like Carol Campbell, Christy Bradford, Kimbria Worley, LaDonna Harris, and others who have helped me navigate this onboarding process. And if you've ever started a new job, you know that there's always one thing that you miss every day. And I'm thankful. And lastly, as we celebrate Black Women's History Month, I want to acknowledge the presence of our president, Ruth J. Simmons, whose visionary leadership is incomparable and really why I'm standing here talking to you today. Literally, the first time she said it, I was like, oh, that's funny. Coming home, hilarious. A year later, I'm standing here. So today I want to talk to you from the title of my lecture that I'm going to give you, a mini lecture I'm going to give you today. The title is The F Word. Family lore has it that my great-great-grandmother, Nancy Foote, crossed the Colorado River and gave birth to my great-grandmother, Elvira, 2 days after Blacks enslaved in Texas were sot-free. I don't know why they say sot like that, but they all do when they say it. Or 2 days after that day that we have come to celebrate as Juneteenth. On June 21st, 1865, Nancy Foote, likely hearing rumors of Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation that had been put into effect 2 years before, and probably anticipating her impending freedom, decided to leave whatever plantation she was held captive on and set out to ensure that her child was not also born in captivity. Imagine a woman days from giving birth, traveling miles, presumably alone, to find safe refuge, a free space to give birth to a free child. That child, Elvira Foote Space, gave birth to my grandfather, George Sanford Space, who gave birth to my mother, Sandra Spates Price, who gave birth to me. Nancy, Elvira, George, Sandra, and me. Without knowing it, my great-grandmother embodied the essence of Black women's social and political perspectives. Nancy Foote embodied the F words that I want to talk to you about today. She pursued a life of freedom that I would argue fits squarely in the legacy of Black feminists and engaged in activities that secured a Black future. Freedom, feminist, future, the F words. One of the most beautiful gifts and talents of the African American community is our ability to imagine worlds in which we have not lived and to take the scraps of America that America has offered us and turn that into a tapestry. We are a people who desired, advocated for, resisted for, worked for, and dreamed for a world of freedom that we have not experienced for centuries. Who, while held in bondage, took remnants of home and pieces of a new world to create a new culture in America's most unique art forms. Or as Nanny Helen Burroughs would say, we as a people specialize in the wholly impossible. The first proposition, or F word, I want to offer today is that African American women's understanding of freedom is not only distinct, but it is critical to any liberation project. For African American women, freedom has to include everyone, or no one is free. Their fight for equity and access to human and civil rights has historically been and continues to be a fight that includes women along with and alongside everyone else. There is no freedom for Black women without free Black men, free Black children, and as our identity vocabulary has expanded, I believe that includes free Black queer people, free Black trans people, and free gender nonconforming people. Black womanhood is an intersectional identity that requires the navigation of multiple systems of oppression from a place of disadvantage. The combined effects of white supremacy and patriarchy in particular work together to render Black women invisible in spaces of power and hypervisible in spaces of derision and negative judgment. Black women simultaneously hold multiple identities that are targeted for discrimination, and as a result, they find themselves having to fight oppressions on multiple fronts. They are Black and woman, and often poor, in any number of categories that society has seen fit to denigrate and deny rights. Patricia Hill Collins suggests that they are situated in a matrix of oppression that, when combined, uniquely impacts Black women's lived experience. The fact that Black women are experiencing multiple kinds of oppression gives them a vantage point to see the vacuums and loopholes in American society that most need to be addressed. They understand the perils of thinking that you can end one kind of oppression while holding others in place. It is clear that you cannot get rid of racism and leave sexism in place, because then Black women would still not be free. When we talk about African American conceptions of freedom, I like to start with the world Black people created at emancipation. What they did in the first moments, in the first years, in the first decades of their fragile liberty. We learn a tremendous amount about the limits of freedom, about the limits of any freedom exclusively based in a single identity. We see that the fight against racism, when severed from the fight against sexism, never yields true freedom for any of us. In the wake of emancipation, abolitionists fighting the end of slavery like Frederick Douglass and others broke with suffragists who wanted to expand the vote to include women. The 14th Amendment guaranteed all races equal protection under the law, and the very next amendment limited access to that new government on the basis of gender. The passage of the 15th Amendment secured Black men's access to the ballot and a formal voice in the government. Black women, like all women, had to rely on men in their homes, their churches, and their communities to represent the issues most important to them. The concerns of women would be filtered through the values and opinions of men. Now, women used creative means to ensure that Black men knew that they were not just participating in politics for themselves, but their choices should reflect the wishes of the entire community. Newly freed Blacks held community discussions on all political matters, and there were no restrictions on who could participate. Slavery was no respecter of persons. Therefore, everyone should have a voice in their freedom. Everyone participated in these loud, raucous, funny deliberations. I mean, if you read about them, they would just stand up and tell jokes in the middle of very serious discussions. They would call national holidays whenever they felt like it. They were free, and they wanted everyone to know it. And everyone voted on which preferences the community's representatives, AKA men, would take to the legislature, to city councils, and the voting booth. On voting days, everyone would take the day off, and given the violence of the time and the relative safety of groups, Black women sometimes served as armed security for men while they were casting their ballots. Black women, along with men, also sanctioned men who went against community wishes. They were put out of churches and fraternal societies and were denied spaces in rooming houses and other rented living spaces. So women were integral to the overall functioning of the Black community, but they lacked a formal political voice that would allow them to articulate and endorse their own preferences. In those moments, Black women understood better than anyone that limited freedom and indirect freedom are lesser forms of freedom. In fact, they are not free at all. Decades later, when women were pushing for the right to vote, white women activists would hold segregated marches to appease white Southern women and politicians. Once again, Black women would find themselves having to argue for a formal political right that they deserved while waging an internal fight among a group that they shared an identity with, but also held white supremacist views. If we are willing to listen, Black women can teach us about a global freedom that removes the limits on race and gender, but also the limits imposed by prejudices based on class, sexual orientation, gender identity, immigration status, and all forms of categories. This leads to the second F word, feminist. I am, as my friend Dr. Brittany Cooper would say, a capital B, capital F, Black feminist, which she likes to say means we ride for Black women and girls. I support Black women, I advocate for Black women, and though it sometimes feels like the road less traveled, I believe Black women when they talk. But ultimately, I'm a Black feminist because I understand that there is no healthy Black community without healthy, whole, and free Black women and girls. There's a popular notion that feminism is for white women. And I would say, sure, some of it. But it is possible to subscribe, and I know because I do it, to a Black feminist view that has absolutely nothing to do with white women at all. Black feminist voices have always existed. I am a Black feminist because Black women have taught me that my gender is as important as my race. In 1832, Maria Stewart was the first American woman to speak in a mixed audience of men, women, whites, and Blacks, which was not done because women were not supposed to speak in public, and they were not supposed to speak amongst audiences unless they were women only. The newspaper reported that she spoke to what they called a promiscuous audience. I just thought that was a cute way of saying it, a promiscuous audience. She was the first African-American woman also, I'm sorry, I should have said Maria Stewart was Black, but I feel like you knew that too. But anyway, she was the first African-American woman to lecture about women's rights. Stewart focused particularly on the rights of Black women. She argued in 1832 that Black women had so much to offer this nation, but because of prejudices, were relegated to the hard life of domestic service, not because they were not talented, but because other people could not see their value. Since 1832, we have the voices of so many Black women who've worked tirelessly to ensure that all Black people and all people more broadly live a life that is untethered to the limits of other people's prejudices. We should call the names more often of Black women activists and intellectuals like Anna Julia Cooper and Fannie Barrier Williams and Nannie Helen Burroughs, but also civil rights activists like Pauli Murray and Ella Baker and Diane Nash. These are women who were giants in their own time, but for most of them, their contribution and the importance of their work was never given the acknowledgement they deserved. Like Nancy Foote, these women worked in virtual obscurity, but worked with a purpose. I should also mention, I know I've been saying a lot about hard work, that though the work was hard and sometimes thankless, these women were not deprived of joy. If you read the stories of these women's lives, they were full of laughter and shade and intrigue and politics and yes, even good sex. It all comes with the feminist category. I wasn't sure whether I was gonna say that, but now that it's out, I can go along with the rest of this and be less nervous. But it is true. Look at the studies. If you don't believe me, I think you should take some time to read the love letters of Alice Dunbar that she wrote to Paul Laurence Dunbar, or read Ida B. Wells' diary, or look at the accounts of the time Black women activists visited Frederick Douglass's house after he had married a white woman. It did not go well. This is all history. I am not making it up. These women were fun and difficult and visionary. They were beautifully and fully human. These women were redefining freedom, and they were feminists, and they were focused on the future, knowing that their rewards would not all be reaped in their lifetime. Black women create futures by the work they do today. As we speak, Black women's labor is transforming American life and politics. Black women as a voting demographic outvoted everyone in 2008 and 2012. I heard Melissa Harris Perry say recently that Black women vote at the rates of people who live in countries where to not vote would be illegal. They vote, she says, like it's the law. They participate, and it's their participation that gave a young senator from Illinois the boost he needed in South Carolina in 2008 to gain the nomination that would result in the nation's first Black president, and return him to the White House in 2012. 97% of Black women voted against Trump. And when an HBCU grad living in Georgia decided that she should be the nation's first Black woman governor, she set about creating a voting pool that could get her elected. Rather than try to convert racially conservative and racist whites to vote for her, she registered hundreds of thousands of first-time voters, young voters, voters from other communities of color, disaffected voters, newly naturalized citizens, and created a coalition that was only stopped by the legal machinations, that's a fancy way of saying cheating, of her opponent. Our campus knows better than most that there are still forces that are threatened by the engagement of a Black electorate. Were it not for voter suppression, we would all be talking about Governor Stacey Abrams today. And she would be in an even better position to do the thing that many of us are hoping for. That is, running to become the first Black woman president. The most significant movement of this young century began with 3 Black queer women who stood up to demand that Black lives matter. Oprah Tometi, Patrisse Cullors, and Alicia Garza saw the death of young Trayvon Martin, who was killed within shouting distance of his own house, and they saw the way the police took the word of a white vigilante rather than understanding the humanity of the child he killed. And they declared that Black Lives Matter and created a movement that grew with the death of Mike Brown. And when the coverage and attention became disproportionately focused on Black males who were dying, legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw challenged us to say her name. And remember that Black women are not immune to racialized violence, a lesson we learned in the beautiful life and tragic death of our own PV sister, Sandra Bland. It is fitting that the end of Black History Month leads to the beginning of Women's History Month because Black women, frankly, deserve double celebration. Black women have been warriors in the fight for freedom from racism and sexism. They have lived by Shirley Chisholm's advice that if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. They redefine old and build new concepts that help us explain and transform ourselves and our social world. So when people start to stereotype Black women as too sassy or too aggressive or too promiscuous, or when they call little Black girls being victimized by adults too fast or too womanish, and you know your history and you know that Black women are more than the stereotypes in the minds of others, and you start to do as I do, start to feel some type of way about it, and you can feel yourself about to start blessing people with the other F word, it is my hope today that I have offered you some alternative F words that filled with knowledge and pride and lessons learned from the dope Black women in your own lives, that you will think about Black women's contribution to freedom, feminism, and future, and remind all the naysayers and the haters that good things happen in this world.
Happy Women's History Month, everyone. And thank you to all the men who came out as well. We greatly appreciate y'all for coming. Give a round of applause for them. So I'm very elated to be in your presence today, as well as celebrating something that has been worth fighting for many years. I look around the room and I see nothing but beauty, nothing but strength, nothing but resilience. I hope that you all enjoyed our program today, and while it appears as we will have to continue to face some challenges as time progresses, it is reassuring to see that we will and are handling them as a unified and powerful force. This year's theme for the Women's History Month is Visionary Women, Champions of Peace and Nonviolence. Sorry, I ran up here, I'm over here out of breath. Okay. This theme caters to women who have led efforts to end war, violence, and injustice, and pioneered the use of nonviolence to change society. These women embrace the fact that the means determine the ends and develop the nonviolence methods to ensure just and peaceful results. These women consciously built supportive nonviolent alternatives and loving communities, as well as advocating change. They have given voices and hope to underrepresented, victims of violence, and those who dream of a peaceful world. It's our job to amplify women's voices to honor the past, inform the present, and inspire the future. We must play to win, make an impression, speak out, take a seat at the table, know what matters, and always step ahead. As Oprah Winfrey said, I want all girls to know that a new day is on the horizon. And when that new day finally dawns, it will be because of a lot of magnificent women. I encourage all my PVAMU sisters to be the young activists of today for change. Do not be deterred or discouraged. The journey will continue to be difficult, but I am convinced and confident that you have the necessary strength and ability to reach the destination, both for yourselves and future generations. We must continue to champion the change that we wish to see in our communities, this campus, and across the world. May we continue to make history as women. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I want to do my thank yous first, and I had to write them down like I'm doing an Oscar speech. But I want to say thank you to Dr. Price, Dr. Simmons, Ms. Campbell, if you can stand, Ms. Shaw, Mr. Briscoe, if you all can stand real quick. I want all of you to give them a round of applause. They helped to put this entire thing together, and we're so grateful. You know, they also helped us with our Kickoff luncheon that was Friday, and it was beautiful. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. All right, Miss PV, thank you. You did a wonderful job. I love the song, Miss Cornelius. I was moved. Thank you. Chelsea, if we can get you to stand. Miss Chelsea Young, Miss Shannon Smith, and Miss Lori Proctor. I'm not sure if she's here, but this is the committee for the kickoff. They helped to put all this together. They did it all. I was at the dentist with my son. They did this whole thing, and they did a wonderful job. So I just want to say thank you. Miss Ashley Santos, she stepped in and helped us too. So I want to say thank you so much. And to the members of the Women's Council, Women's Leadership Council, can you stand up real quick so you can be recognized? Don't be shy. Thank you, ladies, so much. Yes, thank you for coming out. Thank you for supporting this event. And I want to say to my co-chair, Dr. E. Joanna Thomas Smith, Provost Emeritus. I love to say that. I don't know why, I just do. I want to say thank you so much for teaching me so much, because I have learned so much in our little short time together working this year. Thank you so much. Now, if you know me, you know I got something up my sleeve. We started off Women's History Month with Moving the Needle. You all remember Moving the Needle with Miss Ebby Myers. And we talked about leadership and about women getting involved and being heard and doing different things. I want us to also move our feet. So I have, and you should have received this sheet when you came in. If you didn't, you're getting it right now. This is a Moving Your Feet challenge. So let's move our feet and do some steps. Lunchtime, before work, after work. Instead of sending a student worker to go take something across campus, get your steps in. and walk across campus and bring your tennis shoes and, get your steps in so that we can move our feet. So we're gonna move the needle on that too. So I just have some information. I got a little chart here. At our next meeting, I'm gonna ask you to bring your charts and we're gonna see just how well you've done. So don't forget to chart every day or whenever you get the opportunity, but let's move our feet. So I wanna say thank you all so much. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for giving us such a great start. Thank you everyone for coming out and have a good afternoon.